The scene everybody remembers from The Great Santini, at least the one they think of first, is the basketball scene.
Right.
With your son, who's played by Michael O'Keefe.
Right.
Where you're just bullying the hell out of him.
Yeah, I remember that. It was a nice scene to do. It's been so long, but it was an interesting scene, you know, kind of externalized the maybe wrong kind of passion he had for what he wanted his son to do and become and grow into, you know. It's like too much.
What in your own experience did you draw on to play this guy who had been this tremendous military man, and now he just can't reconcile himself to a peacetime situation, and he carries it over in his relationship with his family? He's got to be so domineering and everything.
Well, I think, I don't really know. My father was a professional military man, and we had a transient life like that. We moved around a lot, but my dad was more quiet, and he didn't talk about it. He wasn't loud and boisterous like that. I just kind of went from my instinct and what certain special service officers I'd seen when I was in the service, and it was a good script, and I kind of went with my instincts, and also certain people I met around me, certain Marines, but kind of went just from what I felt at the time.
When you do a movie like that, and it's so well received on both levels, critically and popularly, did you hear from a lot of people who said, you know, that really got to me because in some way it reminded me of my own relationship with my father?
A lot of people said their father was just like that, and on the other hand, they said what a monster he was, and yet a lot of people said it was like my father. And, you know, I contend that the guy, he cared, or he wouldn't have made the noise he made. At least he cared. His style was not so great in showing how he felt about his children, but at least he cared. And a lot of people do say my father was exactly like that, and maybe they had their trying times as well, but I'm sure they have their fond memories, too.
In the basketball scene, obviously he'd always beaten the son, but now the son's getting better, and he's got him that day, and he beats him, and Santini tries to change the rule. He tries to say you got to win by 2.
Yeah, people do that, I think. Yeah, they become like boys again, or infants. They become more infantile than their own sons. The competitiveness, yeah.
Kill a Mockingbird, your first movie?
First feature film, yeah, it was. I'd done some television, but it was my first feature film.
Not a big speaking part,
no.
Boo Radley.
I had one word and they cut it. The one line was, "Where's my home?" or which way, or something like that. They cut that, so it was nothing. There was no lines. Great part, I loved it. Great part. What a great part for a first-time film.
Boo Radley was the guy who lived in the house next door, never came out, and naturally some legend built around him, especially among the kids with their active imaginations. And then in the end, he comes out and,
they
and
thought
saves...
he was an ogre, a bad guy. He saves their lives at the end. He's a good guy. But they were all afraid of him and everything.
A little sort of subtle difference between how removed he was all the time and his kind of halting motion towards some sort of intimacy with the little children. You couldn't overplay it because obviously he couldn't awaken that quickly, but you had to show some little stirring.
When they opened the door and I was standing there to touch, said, "Go ahead, touch." I have to touch the boys, like, you know, it's almost like an animal type. Nice, because I remember I was relaxed. I had done enough television, so I wasn't like freaked out. This was my first film because it's the same procedure, really. So it was like a nice. I knew it was a part that you could make points, but in a good way, hopefully. I don't mean, you know, and I felt that I was okay, I was relaxed, and it didn't intimidate me, so what happened in that scene, I can remember, it felt nice, you know. It was like life, a little bit.
Despite all the acclaim you received, are you skeptical about critics in general?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I watched the critics on TV last night, these guys in the tuxedos talking. I mean, show me one critic that directed a film, and I'll show you a tremendous failure. Show me one critic that wrote a great script, I'll show you a tremendous failure. Show me one critic that gave a great acting performance, and I'll show you a failure. So I think it can be taken too seriously, you know. I really do. I think, was it Pauline Kael retired lately and took a parting shot at De Niro? Her limited knowledge as she rides into the sunset with her iffy husband. I mean, what is that about, you know? It's, you know, his gifts far go beyond her limited knowledge.
But that doesn't mean, just for the sake of argument, that as long as someone acknowledges that they have no right to speak contemptuously of a De Niro, that that being acknowledged, they could still have a legitimate observation
Absolutely.
about him.
Absolutely, but that doesn't make it any more legitimate than my next door neighbor. Usually, I think the prerequisite to being a good critic is to have a very good writing style and an opinion. But you know, when I was a young actor and came to New York, I chose to study with Sanford Meisner. I think Brando and guys like that, they never went to Stella Adler. Other people went to Strasberg. And if you were going to study with a woman, there's some wonderful, there was Uta Hagen, there was Stella Adler, there was Mira Rostova. These were people, you know, that were very critical, but would give credit where credit was due. But, you know, people that had practiced the craft and then were now imparting it by becoming teachers. I never heard of an actor that really went to New York and studied with Pauline Kael or whoever, or anybody. I don't think they give acting, you know, workshops or whatever. So I think you have to be careful that you can't, but these people write in print, and 50 years from now they'll see something like an indictment on, you know, concerning someone, and people say, oh, well, they must not have been very good. So I think, you know, in a way, through the written word, they get the last laugh in a way, and it's really, the qualification is not that high, really, because nobody directs, nobody acts, so I don't know how they really know.
Although I
we
guess,
do.
To me, I think the key is, as long as you don't descend into contempt.
Well, it happens, though.
You know,
of
course it does, and that's what's annoying.
That's what I'm saying.
There may be some
saying.
individuals who are worthy of contempt,
Yeah.
but once, or deserving of contempt, but once someone has established a certain body of work and a certain level of ability, I think that their work can be fairly critiqued, and knocking opinions around is part of what makes it interesting. But they ought to be exempt from contempt, from a sneering dismissal.
Well, there's a
from
lot of
somebody
that.
in that position.
That's mainly what I'm talking about. You have to go to the best of their work. I think what somebody said, John Simon had attacked some woman's physical looks or something one
Yeah, he
time.
does that a lot.
And she poured a plate of soup over his head at Del Soma's restaurant. And you go, you know, I mean, you know. Oh, we went to see the opening of Short Eyes one time. Eddie White, he goes downstairs, this guy, he says, I can't believe it. I'm downstairs and Joe Papp's beating the crap out of John Simon. I went to stop the fight, and the Joe Papp secretary said, no, Mr. Simon has deserved this for a long time. So he said, I don't need to do this. I can do something else. And Joe says, do something else. You're ruining lives, you know. So I guess old Joe's pretty feisty, and then he wouldn't allow another critic to come to one of his plays, you know, because he's trying to protect the performers from much of the thing, what you're talking about, this kind of contemptuous kind of, you know, it's okay to be objective and say certain things, but they get pretty low down sometimes.